possible, and then tutulie. Remember, Rishenazo, asante. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this live broadcast. We're coming to you live from County number 16, Machakos County. And Machakos University is playing host to us. My name is Jesse Rogers, and we're here for an all-important conversation, something that the nation is plugging into, and they're giving their take in terms of the new varsity funding model. I'm sure most of you back at home have interacted with this piece of news in one way or the other. If it's in terms of the government promoting its usefulness as it comes to plug in the gaps within the varsity funding model, but equally, you've equally heard from the students themselves, who recently, they've been up in arms protesting what they call lack of equity and fairness in terms of the new varsity model. That's why we're here, camping at Machakos University, trying to dot the I's, cross the T's, find out what exactly is working or what is not working when it comes to the new varsity model. So we'll definitely be having a town hall right here at the auditorium in Machakos University. I'm joined by an esteemed panel of experts, but equally, we're joined by the students themselves, members of the faculty, who will be giving us their take on the issues that are rising when it comes to the implementation of the new varsity funding model. Before I get to introduce my panelists right here, I'm not alone. My colleague Suleiman Yeri joins me. Suleiman, over to you.
Shukran sana Jesse Rogers, kama ulivyotanguliza kusema ni kwamba tuko moja kwa moja mubashara kutoka chuo kikuu cha Machakos University, na hapo ndipo leo hii tutadadavua masuala mbalimbali ambayo yanafungamana na ufadhili wa vyuo vikuu. Hapa tutazisikiza sauti kutoka kwa wanafunzi, manake niko upande wao huu, nitakuwa nasikiza kauli zao ambazo watakuwa wanazirusha kwa wageni wetu kuweza kuwauliza, na vile pia wao kusikia sauti zao, mchango wao, maoni yao, manake wanahisi kwamba wao ndio walengwa, wao ndio wapo katika kiini cha mazungumzo haya. Kwa hivyo wao watakuwa katika sehemu kubwa zaidi kuweza kusikia ni yapi yale ambayo yatakuwa yanazungumzwa na viongozi mbalimbali. Kwako Jesse Rogers, naona tayari una jopo ambalo limeshiba kweli kweli.
Well, asante Suleiman Yeri. Back to the panel. Allow me to introduce our panelists who are joining us right here on the podium. I'll start with the gentleman on my immediate left. He is Professor Romanus Odhiambo. He is the Vice Chancellor of Meru University. Asante sana for your time and karibu.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Equally joined by Emmanuel Manyasa, who's an Executive Director of Usawa Agenda. He's a stakeholder in the education sector, and we're looking forward to your contributions right here on the panel. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you. Equally joined by Kingori Ndegwa. He's the head of lending at the HELB institution. Kingori, thank you for your time, and I'm sure some of the students will have burning issues, burning questions for you. Looking forward to your contributions. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jabo, comrades.
Of course, last but not least, she needs no introduction, a familiar face. Honorable Beatrice Elachi joins us on the panel. She's the Member of Parliament from Dagoretti North. Remember, legislators have a very crucial role in the implementation of this new funding model. So, karibu sana, mheshimiwa. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the panel.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Comrade Power.
Perhaps we should have started with that. Comrade Power. We see you're here alive and present. So I'll just start with a brief on what exactly this new education, the new varsity funding model entails. for benefit of our viewers back at home who might just be plugging into the conversation. Now, this new higher education funding model was unveiled back in May 3rd, 2023, with the aim of addressing challenges encountered by public universities and TVET institutions due to massive enrollment, inadequate funding, and debts that have been incurred by these public institutions. Now, this new financing model is set to focus on students' financial needs and separates placement from funding. Now, the main difference between the previous and the current model is the fact that, unlike before, universities will no longer receive block funding in the form of capitation. Instead, funding for students will be provided through scholarships, through loans, and household contributions. And under this new model, universities' fund will offer scholarships to students based on their levels of need. The level of need will be assessed through means testing. I'm sure you've come across that name before. And that means testing places students under 5 bands. Mind you, the 5 bands are based on family income and will determine the level of support in terms of government scholarship to cover university's fee and upkeep loan. So as I mentioned, 5 bands, and the students are placed in whichever band according to their family's capability in terms of financial resources. So that's just a breakdown of this new funding model, which has been the cause of star along social media platforms, equally amongst public universities, because some don't seem to agree with the new funding model. And we're here to ask the critical questions. We'll be seeking to find out the effectiveness of this new model, the analysis of the beneficiaries, the accuracy of needs assessment process used to determine student financial aid eligibility. Those are some of the questions we'll be seeking to ask, and equally we'll be opening up the discussion to members who are seated right here, congregating in the auditorium, so they can equally have their own form of public participation. Ask the crucial questions, ask the burning questions, and we have the experts right here to contribute necessarily. So equally, it's proper to note that we are hosted by Machakos University, and with us we equally have the member of the faculty and staff who are present, and we definitely appreciate your presence. We'll be interacting with you as well to get your take as members of the faculty, as you interact with the students, what seems to be arising when it comes to this new varsity funding model. So let's start on that particular note, because there have been concerns that have been raised by students and members of the public on the new varsity model. Bwana VC, I'd like to begin with you. If you give us your opening remarks, we'd like to test your take on the effectiveness of this new funding model. We've heard that vice chancellors are happy about it, that in 3 or 4 years, you might be breaking even. So why? Why is this?
Thank you very much, Comrade Power. Comrade Power. My name is Professor Romanus Odhiambo, Professor of Statistics and the Vice Chancellor, Meru University of Science and Technology. Professor Joyce Sagalo, who is the Vice Chancellor of Machakos University, is a great friend of mine, and she's aware I'm here. And her deputy is here, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs. The new funding model came as a result of the financial challenges that we have had in Kenya for a long time. Before it came, we did have what we call the differentiated unit course that was also being done. Once you are admitted, you are placed automatically, you are being funded. And the government, as a government, we had promised that we would give 80% of the total fees, the differentiated total fees. If you're doing education, you pay this. If you're doing engineering, you are paying this. If you're doing law, you are paying this. So that's what we call the differentiated aspect. So the government did promise really to give 80% of that. And then you, the student, were to pay the 20%, which for a long time, the tuition fee was only 16,000. Now, over the years, due to the increment of the number of students coming to the university, and there are a lot of demand we have in the country, the government has not been able to give that 80%. In fact, the latest that we ever had was around 48, 50%. So the question is, where were you to get the 30%? That explains why there has been exponential drop in terms of the services, the financial services that the university is supposed to give you as the students. The Ruto presidency, when it came in, now came up with a new funding model, what we call the student-centered funding model. And the idea is now coming to the university, being placed by COOPs to come to the university does not automatically qualify you to get that 80%. But we did separate the placement from the funding. And so the new funding model concentrates basically knowing who you are in terms of your financial needs and basically placing you into the 5 bands. And I want to tell all Kenyans, the 5 bands are not new. For a long time, even during the DUC, when you come to the university, you have been getting student upkeep ranging between 40,000 to 60,000. And they have always been banned. Even me as a professor who went to school for a long time were being banded. So the banding has been there. The only thing that is now come in is now this 80% of your tuition fee, the total tuition fee, it has to be now be distributed in such a way that you are paying as per your level of needs. The beauty, of course, you were called to declare your neediness. And that is so what you give is what now determine where you are placed. I think that's what I can say. But the last thing is, because you wanted to, the effectiveness. Yes, we are now in the second cohort. The first cohort of the 2022, the people who did Form 4 in 2022 are now going to second year. And the people who did Form 4 in 2023 are now coming first year. So we have 2 cohorts. Many public universities have done their financial statements. And I can tell you nearly all of them have indicated a possibility that for the first time they're declaring some surplus instead of deficit that we have declared for the last 5-6 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll be definitely conversing with you in terms of the public university's point of view when it comes to the new varsity model. Over to Emmanuel Manyasa. This model was rolled out with the promise of fairness and equity. And the model claimed to distribute funds based on who needs it the most. So far, with everything that has played out in the public gallery, is this model achieving its intended purpose from your point of view?
Thank you, Jesse, for having me here. Let me very briefly introduce myself. My name is Emmanuel Manyasa. I am a trained development economist. I taught economics in KU for 11 years and have been out here for the last 10 years doing full-time research on education. I work for an organization known as Usawa Agenda, and we promote education justice. We made a presentation to the Presidential Working Party, and we asked them that we understand government has challenges in meeting full cost for everyone who goes to school. Is there a possibility of a new funding model that will fund those who need and not everybody equally? So this is something that I want us to understand. And I think that we miss the point when we start to mix the new funding model with the problems that universities are facing financially. And I'll clarify that. Because the new funding model is supposed to deal with equity issues and say government should not give everyone the same amount of money when they don't have equal need. We have people in this country who are taking their children to private primary schools and paying 300,000 per year for primary school kids, even 400. And we said those people for sure, they don't need government support at the university unless they can demonstrate that either the fees was being paid for by the employer and now the person has lost the job, or that their income has changed for us. There is no need for government to give them the 70,000 they were giving per child. They can afford it. If they can afford to pay 300,000 for a kid in primary. The problems universities are facing, and I want to sympathize with Professor here and the current VCs. Current VCs are what Professor Gitu Muigai will call morticians. You received dead patients, and your responsibility is to try and conduct a postmortem and establish the cause of death. Our universities are facing financial problems because of mismanagement of the past. And I was in the university, I saw mismanagement happening, so I know what I'm talking about. When universities were making a lot of money from self-sponsored programs, government asked them to declare how much they were making so that it can factor that in the capitation funds. And the universities refused. So what did the government do? Made an estimate of how much it thought they were making and cut capitation by the same percentage. Now, self-sponsored programs have dried up. And so there's no money coming from that stream. But the government has not gone back to say we will revise the capitation amounts back up. And that has caused the problems that the universities are facing. That cannot be solved by the new funding model. The new funding model is supposed to address equity and not financial crisis in the university. In fact, as currently implemented, that will cause more crisis in the university.
Why is that?
I have full confidence of analysis on that. Why? Because if you take some of these small universities that we are starting all over the place and allow them to charge the same fee that USIU charges for a course or Strathmore charges, you simply send those students in band 4 and 5 to those private universities. They will not come to the public university. And that will worsen the financial crisis. That is one. Two, whatever amount that the government is offering as scholarships is going to be too much for government to give once we have all the students enrolled in the new model. That's why we didn't have this cry last year when there was only one group in the new model. Now that there are two, government is starting to feel pressure. They try to push everyone into higher bands, and that's why we have the crisis. That points to another problem. The problem of the means testing tool not being a robust tool in itself and possible to be manipulated. This year, it placed a lot of learners in band 3, 4, and 5. Last year when it started, it didn't put many students in those two bands. That's why there was no such cry. Now there is. That cry will get louder when we get to the third cohort in the same funding model. So for me, from where I sit, we need to maintain the equity perspective that informed the new funding model, separate that from the financial crisis that universities are facing, and understand that world over public universities are not run by school fees. In no country in the world are public universities run by school fees. You cannot raise school fees to run a university. Unless it's a private university, it's targeting a few elite who go there, and you can charge them a premium fee. Public universities are run by capitation and endowments. Our universities had a chance to build endowments when they were making a lot of money from self-sponsored programs. They splashed it around, opened campuses all over, which they have closed and made huge losses from.
Okay, interesting. I'm sure Professor Romanes has something to say to that, but we'll allow him to hold on to his thoughts, even as we engage Bwana Kingori, who's joining us right here from the Higher Education Loans Board. And Kingori, you're a major stakeholder in the implementation of this new varsity funding model. Perhaps you can start with an update, because we've seen reports on mainstream media that up to, is it over 16,000 applicants want to actually change the bands they've been put into. Let's talk about the band placement and the changes in terms of appeals. What's the latest in terms of that particular process from where you sit?
Thank you, Jesse. We have so far received about 146,000 applications for undergraduate students. And remember, we also have TVETs. Those applications have all been processed and students have been budded. We have progressed into payments for first years. Most of the comrades here, you see, I don't know whether they are first years, but majority of them have received a lot of money in their pockets. Some of them are calling me to ask me, where are you? To kusalimie. So but I hope nikusalimia. So, and then we have progressed from now payments to the appeal phase. Now, what we saw this year, we have about 12,000 appeals. The results were supposed to be out this week, and I believe the PS Education will be able to announce that between now and Monday. They're already out. But what we saw, most of the students were not able to provide the correct information. They surrendered their rights, they surrendered their data to the cyber cafes, and then they went. Only later to discover when the initial results were out, they came learning, I have been put in band 5. It's a long band for me. Namuliza, why? Because, I was sponsored in high school, but the cyber person told me, if I put that one, HELB will think that I'll be sponsored even in high school. Another one comes, like now, children with disability. Why didn't you put the card number? And you only required, you asked, do you have any disability in the family? Yes. If you say that, a card is put. So they were saying, well, the cyber person never told me. So most of the complaints we had, especially on day one after the applications were announced, were people who had information that they were supposed to provide at the point of application, and they never did. And when you ask them, they were clear. We didn't see, the cyber cafe person never told us. The cyber cafe said it is clumsy to upload a document. And so they were baded longly. And that's why they were coming to us telling us, nimewekwa the wrong bad. Then Namuliza, how do you know you have been put in the wrong bad? Because I have this information that I did not provide. Now give me a chance to provide it. And we allowed them to do that, and they were reanalyzed immediately because they were already in the universities. Thank you.
But and I have to interject there. Is it solely based on the shortcomings of the students? Are there inadequacies within this band testing itself? Because we have a committee that has been set up to look into the challenges that are upcoming around the means testing instrument. Apart from the students who did not feel the proper information, and that's why they've been put in the wrong bands, what about the challenges within, from the means testing point of view? Are there any to begin with?
The MTI is this is a tool that we have tested the last 27, 28 years. Last year, you can remember, we ran it so safely, there was no noise. I do not know what happened to the new generation that applied this year, that they just gave out the work to the cyber people. But the MTI is very robust, and when they provided the correct information, just a simple upload of a sponsorship letter, they were put to the correct band, and some of them were telling us, Asante sana. We never did anything. They just provided what they did not provide. So the instrument is very robust. This is an instrument that is being even, we are assisting countries like Rwanda to set up one, countries like South Africa, Tanzania here, we did it ourselves from scratch, Uganda, Malawi. Everybody is coming to look at this wizard kind of tool that can be able to praise students without even having to see the students. Most of the students finish university without ever coming to HELB. Actually, only about 5% would ever visit HELB for one reason or the other. They finish, they find money in their account, they find they were budgeted properly, and they don't know how HELB did it. So the tool is very robust, and you can see even we are giving ideas to people like Chief. They are actually borrowing ideas from us to see how they can use it to determine how much families will contribute. Okay. People like Social Protection, the Labor Department dealing with the cash safety nets, they are also borrowing the same ideas. So I think the tool itself, if well tuned and the correct information provided, it is a super tool.
All right, thank you. And of course, the students will be asking a couple of questions when it comes to the band testing. But let's cross over to Mheshimiwa Beatrice Elachi. You come from quite a populous constituency, and I'm pretty sure the number of schools within your constituency give you the privilege of interacting with some of these parents, learners, to get a true feel of the issues they're raising when it comes to the new varsity funding model. And as a leader, lazima uko in touch na watu kwa ground. So from your constituency, what exactly are the issues that are arising? On which side of the fence do you sit? Is this a good tool that will benefit the nation in the future? Because they say education is the greatest equalizer, so we can't mess with this. What's your take?
Thank you very much. First of all, just to say, yes, as a parent and as a leader who interacts so closely with students, especially those who are going to high school and university, it's a very good model. The challenge we always face as Kenyans, whenever we start a new thing, we'll have a lot of teething problems, we'll have a lot of complaints, but to the students, I would tell you, this is a model that will help one child who is coming, for example, Kacheliba, to university, to be able to see he or herself through. It is how you interact. And I'll tell you as a parent, if you go yourself and lie, because this is a tool, it's an application, it's just the way you're doing your visa to the US. So you fill in the form as you go, you provide every information. The moment you find yourself providing wrong information, then definitely you'll be placed in a band that is not right. So I know the first cohort did very well because we did not have all these cries. And for us, for me, I'll say for Dagoretti North, I met so many students, even some of them who COOPS had put into private universities, but they were supposed to go to public universities. And we managed, we just went to help and dealt with all the issues. Yes, they are still in the private universities, but they are being supported. So for me, this second lot, the biggest mistake many of them did was to go to a cyber, because even me, in my constituency, all of them are in Kawangware, in a cyber. So the cyber guy realizes there's a long line. What do I do? So the first information you get from the first student is what they used to place every student. And that is why they are in band 4, some are in band 5. But then the other thing, they were never told, and I think it's sometimes good not to tell Kenyans, is that by the time they were creating this app, they had picked all your M-Pesas, how you normally transact, how your parents transact. Those who are working in government, you have your PIN number. They've already picked, they know your salaries. Those who your fathers are working into other small jobs, but they normally pay government pay as you earn and all that, were picked. So as much as you put the name and you put in your information, it pops up. Then they had those who have NEMIS numbers. It's very easy. When you put in, when you are applying, when you put in your NEMIS, it just pops up. So if you are going to lie and say, for example, and first of all, nobody declared, most of them never declared they were sponsored by CDF or the governor or even the woman rep. So those are some of the information. So if you did not say that, nobody will know you were supported. So if you are supported by CDF, please just indicate, I was supported by CDF, so that the band now, so that when you are applying, they will know this is a child that was sponsored from high school through CDF and now is joining university. So for me, the thing I will tell every comrade here today, one of the challenges all of us face is even opening up to our parents. Because even I doubt whether parents know the band is there, you have upkeep, you have all this, and we never say, even us, when we used to get boom, we never used to tell our parents, ni boom na kuingia Machako town, na kuanza. So it's the same, we are all students, we've been there. And as our Vice Chancellor said, we used it. It's only that on this one, it has come out now clearer to show what government normally pays for a student, what we normally pay, and what we normally get from HELB. So for the first time, and then I think the mistake was information from the Ministry of Education. When you say program cost, parents are thinking first semester, 612,000. They get confused. How? When did it go that high? So that is one information I want the Ministry of Education to rectify and tell parents, per semester, this is the amount. When you pay, we pay this, you pay this. So if somebody is in band 1, definitely you don't need to go to your parent again for anything. You can pay with your upkeep if you are very serious with your education. And even in band 2, you can. Band 3, you can. So let us also look at home, the challenges we are facing at home, and if God has created this, it can help you to sustain yourself. Because even without that, you are still... I know one of the things the vice chancellors will be feeling very painful is now the days of where you used to go to Jogo and you say, I have 10,000 students. Because it was during JAB, it was lump sum. So 10,000, and maybe you have 7,000. So you walk away with 700 million, okay. And nobody is knowing. But now we are able to count each student of the university. So it's a good model to also account for the students you have in total.
And before we cross over to my colleague Suleiman, Kingori, just in order to update our audiences, in terms of the categories and the placement of students in these bands, what's the percentage look like? How many students have been placed in band 1 compared to band 5 as we speak right now, if you have the statistics?
I think I have the statistics. About 16% are in band 1, about 18% band 2, 26% in band 3, and I think another about 30% in band 4, and band 5 is 7%. So something close to that, but I can cross-check and confirm with my team.
Okay, we'll definitely be cross-checking that. Yeah. Let's cross over to members of the audience. And I'm pretty sure there are a couple of questions you have or points of clarification, something that you feel highlights or touches on your journey with this new varsity funding model. Suleiman Yeri, over to you.
Shukran sana Jesse Rogers. Nataka nizungumze na baadhi ya wanafunzi, nisikie hisia zao kuhusiana na masuala haya ambayo yamekuwa kizungumzwa na viongozi, manaibu chancellor. Nisikie kutoka kwako. Maoni yako ni yapi haswa?
My name is Batila, and first of all, I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. And as you are seeing us sitting here, we are not happy with the banding, the criteria that you used. And if I can pass my question to you, madam, you have said the upkeep is for the school fees. So why are you giving us the upkeep? You could have just sent it directly to the school fees. Why are we receiving the upkeep?
Asante sana. Beatrice Elachi, mheshimiwa, swali lako hilo.
Yes, so thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I would like to ask a question. Yeah, so, okay. So my name is Festus, yeah. So I would like to ask you a question. You say that you introduced this new funding model. So my question goes, must we have this new funding model? Like we used to have that previous funding model. What went wrong with the previous funding model that you had to introduce this new funding model? And I also have another question. How sure are you that this funding model will be a success? Because it's just the second year and we already have complaints. How sure are you that this funding model will last a longer period of time? Yeah. My last question goes, you say that you already have the information of the students. Must they enter the information again? Because you already have it. You could just take it and...
Asante sana, ni maswali mazito haya. Simama. Uliza swali moja ndo wengine pia wapate nafasi.
So thank you. My name is Susan Opol. I'm a second year education student. So according to me, the new funding model, according to the band's placement, I think the band's placement, it is not bad because it caters for equality. But now the problem is, as they analyze the bands, you find that a needy student is placed at band 5 or 4, while like somebody who they are well off at their place is placed at band 1. And then secondly, the scholarship fund, there are delays while they are being released to the schools. So you'd find that second years recently, they have issues while taking the exams because the scholarship funds has not yet been released. Then HELB loan also, you find that this funding model, the students second years currently, they are given like loan. You find that somebody is given 27,000 loan and something like 30,000 upkeep. So you find it 50,000, second semester 50,000, 100,000, compared to the old funding model where somebody is just giving an upkeep of around 40,000. So I think this new funding model, it will be a burden in future for the comrades.
Asante sana. Nishuke hapa chini nisikie baadhi ya kauli kutoka kwa wanafunzi wengine hapa ambao wanazungumza. Utabidi uangalie upande huu.
Thank you very much. I'm Helen Achieng Adero, the ICT and Academic Secretary of the university. My first question is, why the rush about the new funding model? It's supposed to be in its public participation stage, the documentation stage, not the implementation stage. Secondly, the new funding model is going to be a savior of sustainability to the university, but it's going to be a disgrace. It's going to be a crisis to the students as a measure of sustainability. Thirdly, I, as a 5th engineering student and coming from a humble background, I've been able to pay my school fees from the old funding model. But the students who are being quoted, like the students who are doing medicine, engineering, and law, in the new funding model, if you're coming from a humble background, you're not being able to pay this fee, even if you're going to be in band 1. Fourthly, the first years who don't have their IDs, they're able to get their scholarships, but they're not able to get their loans. How is the new funding model going to address that? Thank you.
Asante. Naona maswali haya yameshiba kwa sasa. Nataka niarudishe upande ule kwanza iweze kujibiwa, alafu nirudi nichukue maswali mengine. Yupo hapa pia mwingine. Naomba muuleze swali moja moja maana kimupo na maswali mengi. Swali moja moja tafadhali.
Teacher Michael Mombasa, student leader, English and Literature. Now my question is this to the new funding model. How will my parents' background determine my future? So this is my question. If by today my parents worked and were poor or were rich, why don't the government audit my life and my passion as a student to where I'm heading and ban me to the passion that I'm thinking, maybe I want to be a pilot? Why don't the government just say, this student wants to be a pilot? Now let us fund him or her as according to the passion. Why are they involving my parents' background and directly affecting me as a student? Thank you, that was my question.
Yes, good evening. I'm Ivan Sojala, a student, a 3rd year. I take education science. Number one, I've come to realize that vice chancellors, you've been a bridge to forcing this new funding model to students. Number two, if I may ask again the vice chancellor, may you kindly brief us about your background before you became the vice chancellor? And today you are earning. And why is it only students why is it that when your parents maybe were richer before you became the vice chancellor, that today they should conclude that now that your parents were richer before you became the vice chancellor, you should also receive a smaller salary compared to those vice chancellors who had their backgrounds as poor vice chancellors? I'm not only addressing the vice chancellors, all public servants, including the media people here. Another thing that is not being brought out clearly is how we are going to pay these loans that the government is giving us today. How are you going to ensure that we pay those loans fairly now that I, Ivan Sojala, am paying school fees of maybe 16,000 per year, and my colleague here is paying school fees of about 52,000 per year, and we are taking the same course? Is it not discrimination of highest order? I want you to confirm to us today before we end this session.
Asante sana Evan Sonjala huyo akitoa kauli zake. Niangalie pia kauli ambazo ziko kwenye mtandao. Falini Angel, the money given on bursaries should all be the money given as bursaries should all be directed to education and paid directly to schools instead of giving it to MCAs and MPs. Why will the government allocate more than 100 billion to 47 senators and then allocate 30 billion to 200,000 students? Yes, we have been rebanded, but how can vulnerable cases initially in band 5 yet they were re-appealed to band 4? Is that equity? Hao ni baadhi ya maswali ambayo yapo kwenye mtandao. Nirudi upande wako Jesse Rogers ambapo uendeleze mjadala huu.
Okay, there's an array of questions and we'll try respond to them systematically. So I'll start with the lady who posed the question to Honorable Beatrice Elachi, touching on upkeep going to school fees. She had a problem with that. And equally, one of the questions that has been raised right now through the social media platforms, bursaries going to MPs. Should all this be streamlined? As a stakeholder, what's your take on that?
Thank you. So let me answer Batila. I said, if you know you come from a background where you understand your parents, you can use your upkeep to pay. Didn't I say that? So I didn't force you. If you know your parent is affording, you don't even need to do anything. So it is your upkeep. But what is the purpose of going home for 5,000 shillings and maybe you have and you can pay for yourself? Because you're just going to your same parent, you know, maybe at home. I always say when we walk into the gate, we are all students. But the day we walk out, I walk out alone the way I came. That's why when I'm coming in, I also come alone. I come knowing very well. Me, my mother was a nanny. We used to live in Kangemi. So me, I know. If I was given, I would pay my school fees because I knew at that time what we were going through. So for my boom that time, that's what I did. Because I knew even if I go home to mom, and we are 4 of us, all of us are in campus, we are just going to have a hard time. So it is up to you. You see, one of the things I always say, when we come together as peers, never fear to remember where you are coming from, because that is home, and home is the best. So for me, that's what I said, Batila. I didn't say you have to use it. No. If your parent is affording, you use it according to the upkeep. If you know very well you'll walk out one day being told you can't do your exams, you have to go and look for it, then you have to plan. That's all. But the other thing also I can say about bursary, I am one Mheshimiwa who says, I find it very unfair. Because, and that is why many people always wonder, why is it why Mheshimiwa ask, where did you vote? It's because even as Kenyans, we are not fair. You will come to me, I'll give you bursary. You will go to the next Mheshimiwa, they will give you bursary. You find someone is in a day school, you have paid your school fees, you are about to finish, but you're still looking for bursary. That is why now we have to come up with a different way of ensuring every child is able to get. If we were fair enough, even today, we won't be having a funding model, because all we needed was the rural home to say, this home, they can manage. In fact, it is you who says, that child there needs support. But today we are not like that. We changed. We changed completely. Even when you can afford, even the 2,000 we normally give parents, you will find a home where they afford, they have everyone working, but their parent is still going for the 2,000 of GABA, and yet there's another one who needs. So that's how Kenyans we are. So for me, if I'm told bursary can go to one kitty and ensure in terms of capitation. And that is why I'm pushing the Ministry of Education. Every child in this country must have a NEMIS number. Does not matter the ones of Nairobi who are in ABED schools, does not matter whether you are in a private school, but one thing, a child of Kenya who is in school must have a NEMIS number so that we start accounting even for that capitation. Yes.
Okay, I hope the question was responded to. Let's cross over to the gentleman from the Higher Education Loans Board. A couple of questions fall in your docket. Number one, the cases of needy students being placed in the wrong bunds. There was a question related to that, and equally, it being a burden for comrades. So I guess that question was hinting towards the interest rates around these loans. Are they being looked at? What do we expect if it's in progress? Should they be changed from the current 4% to 2.5% as was prescribed by some student leaders? Equally, in terms of an extended grace period for loan repayments, is this in the works in terms of giving the students some time once they clear campus, giving them some time in order to secure employment first, then they can start paying the loans? Over to you.
The loans are charged an interest of 4% per annum. This is on a reducing balance, and I think it could be the cheapest loan you can ever get anywhere in the world, unless the government led into government. But for any loan, student loan, even in Africa, I think we are the cheapest, because I think the second best is about 9%.
Can it go lower?
It is in the law of, we operate at an act of parliament, and this is the act that set the interest rate. So unless the act is amended, but there is something called sustainability. Avoid doing something today that will affect the future of a program tomorrow. Just like we do the environment, the small things you do to the environment. If you abuse your environment today, tomorrow, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, to come, you will not have rain in Kenya. So it's the same way for this model. If we start shocking it by reducing interest, your children, you comrades seated in front of me, will not have anybody to pay fees for them. You'll have to pay the fees for yourself. Because what we have seen is that even in the current arrangement, we are lending below the inflation rate, even below the base lending rate. I think even we are not even doing even a half of the base lending rate. So avoid doing something today that will jeopardize a good program that is supposed to evolve and support our generations and generations to come. In terms of loan repayment and the loan burden, number one, the ministry has already formed a task force comprising of comrades and some experts. These are the comrades who are going to tell us and make recommendations. Even if they want the interest to come down, they will do that recommendation. But we are flexible in terms of extending the repayment period. Currently, we give 10 years. We have so far extended to about 18 years now. And we are free, because so long as you are working, then we can be able to be flexible. We are a listening organization. In other countries like the UK and USA, you pay the loan for life. Actually, student loans in America, like if you remember when Biden was campaigning, it was about loan forgiveness. And he promised to write off all the loans when he became president, but the Congress refused. So I think that one is something to comment about. In terms of budding, somebody has said that, well, the model is good, but we still have students put in the wrong bud. We have an appeal window, and we are allowing this appeal window because of the challenges that comrades had when they were applying. The people from the SAIBA did not provide the correct information. You have a chance to come and go to the portal and request that now I have new information. Can I appeal? And we'll be able to place you to the correct bud. So we are not saying you are condemned in bud 4, bud 5. No, there is a chance that that can happen. I think...
And equally, is there a chance to reduce these bans? I was looking on the social media platforms, and some students were of the opinion that, we should scrap off this band 5. Perhaps better off classify the students in 3 categories: low income, middle class, and high income, as it is done generally. What's your take on that? Will it be more effective? Because from the points of students, they seem to think that this will serve them better. Your take briefly.
The 5 bads are not cast on stone. I think when the student task force sit down, they can make those recommendations. But remember, like the Honorable MP said here, we are not equal. And everybody would want to go into bad 1. Actually, people have tried all monkey tricks to move from bad 4 to bad 5. Everybody wants to be, and that's a problem in Kenya. Even when you can afford, some students here drive to school. Even the money we give them for upkeep, they buy fuel. Another student can sleep without food. Another student cannot do exams because he cannot be able to pay 5,000. And that's why we have given a generous upkeep, and it's good somebody has talked about the upkeep there, so that the vulnerable students get 60,000. I think comrades who are in 3rd year, 4th year, they know they used to get 60, but we would deduct 8,000 and pay to the university as part of the school fees. This year and last year, we are not deducting. You are getting your full package, because we also know that the cost of living is also affecting comrades.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's cross over to the next question. I think, Manyase, you can answer this. And that question was based on changing the old model, shifting to this new model. He seems to imply that perhaps we could have improved on the tried and tested model, rather than implement this new model, which comes with teething challenges that we are trying to address currently, including that committee that has been set up. So from your point of view as an education stakeholder, what were the challenges attached with the DUC, that differentiated unit cost model, that are being highlighted or addressed with this new model?
Let me say a number of things and try to speak as slowly as I can, so that I make sense. In 1985, Saropoulos wrote a paper and said, higher education confers benefits to the private individual. He was a World Bank economist. And from that time, World Bank was pressuring governments of developing countries to divest out of higher education, so that individuals pay full fees for higher education, because it was claimed that higher education confers private benefits, not public benefits. So President Moi had to live under a lot of pressure trying to fund universities. And that was the theory applying throughout the 90s. In the 2000s, that theory was debunked. And people came to conclude, yes, higher education confers public benefits as well and deserves to be funded by the public. The country called Kenya has been funding higher education as a public good. But for a long time, as the VC has mentioned, the amount of money available, because remember this, until a few years ago, government was not taking to university everyone who had a C+. You know why? Because they were saying we will fund only those we can afford to fund, we'll rank them number 1 to where we can reach, and the rest will have to find their own way, because of limitation of funds. So because of limitation of funds, there was need for conversation on how do we make the available limited funds still educate everyone who was qualified. And to me, from where I sit, that made it necessary to change the funding model. However, my problems, and which I think are the reasons the comrades are unhappy, are 3 things around the new funding model. One is the bands. The bands are too narrow from the beginning. I don't see how the first band can only have up to under 6,000. If you earn 6,000 shillings, you're basically a beggar, because you can't afford your own life, leave alone paying school fees. Yeah? So I don't see how that constitutes a band. My expectation was that band 1 will go up to 70,000. Band 2 will go to 120 or 150. So that by the time we are in band 3, we are talking about 500,000. And by the time we are talking about someone in band 5, you're talking about someone earning 800,000 and above. I don't see how if you earn 120,000, you're in the same band with someone who earns 1 million. We have CEOs in this country earning 3-4 million. How are you in the same band? So that is the first problem with this model, the banding. Yeah, I'm being rushed. And I'm generally a very slow person. So
Well,
that is...
let's do this, because we have to pay bills
I
on
need
our
to make,
end.
I need to make 3 points quickly. Okay. So banding is the problem. We can review those bands. The second thing is that the means testing tool is not robust. And I'll not buy that from my friend. We have been with him on a number of shows. I've told him it is not robust. That's why it is throwing learners randomly into bands. It is not robust. And the third problem is trying to mix it with the financial crisis in the universities when we actually know what is the cause of financial crisis, and we should look for alternatives to solve that crisis. Which brings the issue of the school fees and whether you can pay if you are now for these high cost courses. We need to ask the question, was the amount of increase in the fees rational and justifiable?
Okay, well noted. Allow us to take a short break because we're currently live on KTN. The bills have to be paid. But as we come back, we'll be listening in to Professor Romanus Odhiambo as a VC to give his take on the issues that have been given. Equally, we have a representation from the private universities. We'll be listening to Dr. Vincent Gaitho on his take on the public universities on this whole debacle around the new varsity model. We take a short break. We'll be back in just but a few. Stay with us.